Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Embers, Machinations of Fire, Part 2. Today, my friends, we're getting into the really good stuff. I've shown you just about everything about this mod except how to actually do anything in it. Or at least that's how it feels at times. In this one, we're going to be covering Ember, Ores, and Dawnstone. Basically how you can make and transfer your, make and transfer your Ember, how to double your ores or just get them processed, as well as mix them to make Dawnstone. So in the past, we've covered a whole bunch of item transfer and so on. We're going to be covering a little something extra today. We've got here Machinations of Fire on your Ancient Codex, and we're going to start off with the Copper Cell. Now, the Copper Cell is this conglomeration of knobs and gauges and all sorts of crazy stuff here. Yeah, it's not as bad as it may look. Here, let me bring up Ember's Cell. And we can take a look at the recipe here. You can see it's very simply made with a block of copper, some iron, and some caminite. It's not too bad. I put it down, and it looks much simpler when I place it down like this. This one here is optimized as kind of a waypoint to transfer a whole bunch of stuff out. I've got it currently being used as more or less a storage as well as a splitter. Now I have an ember gauge on top that tells me it holds 24,000 ember inside of it, which is a fuel type. If you want to compare it to something in a tech mod, compare it to RF or Tesla Energy or RS or any of that stuff. It's just this mod's version of stuff, and it is not transferable into the other kinds. It is only usable as ember. Now, you can put on the sides of it your emitters and your acceptors, like this and this. Oops, those are both emitters. Hold on a second here. I know I've got... there we go, there's one here. A receptor. Now, in your codex, if you look here under Machinations of Fire, we already did the Copper Cell. Moving on to the Ember Transfer, which is how to move around the fuel or power source of your mod. The battery is just so you can store it. It's just a battery pack, more or less, for ways of storing that. Now, if you have a Tinker's Hammer, which I sure hope you sure do at this point, you will want to start at the end location. So if I want my pressure refinery to shoot ember over to a copper cell, you will need a Tinker's Hammer, you will need an Ember Emitter, and an Ember Receptor. Now you can take these off and move them as you want, but keep in mind that your emitters and receptors will also store a small amount of ember as well. So if they're waiting to transfer things like this emitter is, it will actually waste 200 if you just break this emitter. So it's recommended that you actually make new ones and put them on the machines that you want. Now if you have something in the way, you don't need to worry about it too much. It should actually just pass through the wall. But if in the path from one emitter to a receptor here. Actually, let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to turn this on. Actually, that just turned it off. Look, what you need to do is start at the end. So I want the ember from my pressure refinery to go to my copper cell. So I just need to shift right click, and you'll hear a ting. Then you go over to the base location, and you just right click on the emitter, and you'll hear a gong type noise, and that means that things are connected. That's actually a good sign. I turn this on, and if it actually needed ember, it would transfer, but it doesn't need ember right now. So let me actually flick this on, and it should start shooting some ember off in another location. Once that is out of its ember, there we go, it's going to transfer now. I can flick this lever, and it's going to start moving ember. Now if there's something in the way, let's say I've got an ember receptor blocking the path, it's just going to go to that ember receptor. So that's something you want to keep in mind. You need to keep the path somewhat clear, but not entirely. And by that, I will show you what I mean here. Let me just shut that off as well. If I have, let's say, this one here, and I want it to shoot to this one here. So I want this emitter to go to this receptor. Now you'd think, well, if it follows a straight line, it will just go straight to it, but it doesn't. It kind of arcs. So let's start here, or well, start at the end, go to the beginning, and then I flick the lever, and it sometimes will, other times it will actually just arc around. So you can see it is currently transferring. I was actually expecting it to go more in a circular fashion, but I guess you'll see what I'm talking about here as we go. So that is one way of moving things around. Your Ember Receptor Here it is, and it's made with just some iron ingots, some copper ingots, caminite plate. Your Ember Emitter is made copper ingots, iron ingots, and a caminite plate. And you get a bunch of them. You don't just get one, so that's a good thing. So you can just place them down, and you could use them as decoration if you want as well. But you can see that's a half block. But there you go. They do sit on a surface, and they will actually change shape, and so that you're looking at them from different angles depending on the surface that you put them on. They can be put on ceilings. They can put on walls. If you just want to transfer a long distance, because there is a restriction on how far you can shoot things, you could feasibly have it go up to this, but then you're going to have a little problem moving it around without something in between, like a copper cell. You can't exactly have one of these feeding from one to the other. It just doesn't work quite like that. Okay, now that we know how to actually transfer the Ember into storage and potentially also use it for powering machines, that's exactly what we're going to do next. Actually power machines. I'm going to be covering the Hearth Coil. And the reason I'm covering the Hearth Coil is before I cover the melter is because it's not as efficient as the melter and probably not going to be used for such an item, but it can have some wonderful uses nonetheless. Now you can see here it currently has no ember in it. It's actually using up the rest that I had in its reservoir. I was using it a moment ago. With that aside, keep in mind that it will require ember. Now, the Hearth Coil itself, now that's made with a bunch of copper plates, a block of copper, a couple iron, and a mechanical core. And once again, it's one of those where you set down a single block and it turns into a 3x3x1. It's pretty cool looking texture. Let me stack it up a little bit and break the other ones. And you can see that it has an in/out put at the bottom here that you'll most likely want to attach a mechanical core to, as I have here. I also put an ember gauge on. I put a couple machine assessors on the side so I could extend this out on the side. I put a little bit of caminite brick wall on the corners just to make it look like there's some kind of support. It's pretty cool. I mean, you can customize this multi-block a little bit so that it looks a little bit more to your liking. In this case, this is what I was looking for. Each of you might have something different, but I have some other stuff going on here. You are going to need your Ember receptor and a power source, of course your Ember emitter from your new copper cell, or just directly from your pressure refinery or whichever you prefer. And take your tinker's hammer, of course. Right click this. If it's attached to a machine assessor or the mechanical core or underneath at the output there, then you can do that, but I recommend that you just do it this way. It's a little bit simpler using a mechanical core and a machine assessor on there just to bring it out, or just the mechanical core. You don't even have to have anything around here. I just did this because the legs might have been in the way a little bit, but I'm gonna turn that on. It'll start shooting at some ember and the light starts heating up, and it's a very slow process. I have over here a whole lot of iron and raw beef. I'm going to turn that on and it's just going to drop on top of this, and it's going to slowly cook this stuff. Now, why in the world would I want to spend so much resources and fuel to slowly cook stuff? Because that's how it is at first. Now, I do have a lot being poured out on here, so that's going to be quite a massive amount of spam in the world. But the idea is, this was a steak from before, so please ignore that. But it will increase in speed so that it will go from, I don't know, like taking longer than a vanilla furnace to no time at all, practically. And it's actually, I'm going to turn that back on so that when it comes in, it'll be good. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to leave that running. Hopefully I don't lag out this recording, and we'll be okay. And you'll see that that will start producing things quite quickly over time. You can see it's building up ember, and it's actually getting a little bit more heated looking. And in this case, just to show you that there is a bit of interactivity with this mod, I have a Botania open crate currently hooked up to an item pipe, so that works in a similar fashion for those that want some reference material. But there you go. I'm going to leave that running, and in the meantime, we're going to go back from the Hearth Coil over to the melter, which is similar. Now, the Hearth Coil can cook things that a furnace can, like beef and iron ore and such. Now, a melter is made specifically to make molten metals. Now, with this one, the recipe is relatively simple. Let's see if I can find it here. Just a bunch of caminite, tiny bit of copper, furnace and a couple iron, and it's going to be good for molten metals. We're going to leave the Hearth Coil running for a bit while this is going. So I have this laid down. It's actually just a very simple, straightforward item here. You've got the items that you want to get melted, get dropped in the top. Now in this case, like I said before, I'm showing off that you can use other mods with this. Botania Open Crate is going to be dropping items in here. And the piping out the molten metals is going to come out of the top. You're going to want your Ember receptor, or the power input, at the bottom here, as you see in place. Put it on the side. Now I have an Ember gauge so you can see if it's getting power or not. Of course, you're going to want your Ember Emitter on either your refinery or a copper cell or some other storage device for it. And I'm going to accidentally power the wrong thing. So let's make sure to use our Tinker's Hammer here. We just shift right click, and now we can start powering the melter itself. And this is just going to get you an ore doubling mechanic. It will get you 2 ingots worth for every ore that you drop in. Now in this case, I have, let me break that out of here. I have a chest here, which I'm going to put in a couple of iron ore. And then I'm going to flick the lever. It drops it in, or you can just throw it in yourself. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to have like this intricate mechanic going in place. And you can see it is currently smoking. If you need to grab something out of there, you can just right click it quickly and pull it out if you put something accidental in there. But you can also see that there is molten metals inside. It smelted the first one, there it goes, and it smelted the second one. So it's no longer cooking on these. They are done and molten. So what you're going to want to do next is move on to making them into ingots. And I've got a mechanical pump with some iron pipes pumping this out of the top. Of course, it also shows you molten iron 576 out of 4,000, so it can hold quite a bit. But you don't want to mix your metals, at least not yet. Now, with the Ancient Codex, we're going to continue on with the stamper, which is actually kind of two parts. There's a stamper and a stamper base, and they're individually made and placed in the world in a specific manner. Now, the stamp base, you just place it down. It's kind of like this little urn looking thing, and 2 blocks above it, you put the stamper itself. And for those that are curious, this with the large blank spot is going to be the top and the area that you do not want facing down. Well, I guess that's a bit confusing, because if you look at it down here, there's a big blank space as well. Just know that it's really not going to rotate anymore. You used to be able to have this sit on its side, but now it's pretty much just going to stamp down. So keep that in mind. You're also going to want to make yourself some bar stamps, or different kinds of stamps at least. If you look here, you've got your plate stamp, your bar stamp, your raw plate stamp. So the different stamps that you have here, let me click outside of this. There we go. If I click on here, are made with Camonite blend, just like the bricks. So in this case, you got your raw plate stamp, got your raw bar stamp. Then you cook those in a furnace, and you'll get your regular versions that you can put on here. So you can make plates and bars with your stamper and your stamp base. Now the fluid from your melter gets pumped into the stamp base, and the stamper itself is what gets ember. So I'm going to need to get a bit of ember from that in here. So let me just shift click this, click that, and you can see it's going around and touching in on that one, now giving the stamper itself ember in order to function. And of course, if I take this bar stamp, put it on there, it will turn anything that goes into here, if there's enough fluid, into bars. So let me turn that on. You can see that it is currently rendering a liquid here, and it is smashing this. Now it's smashing it, but it's not really going to do too much there. Now remember, I tossed in 2 iron ore. In this case, I got 4, so it's an ore doubling, which is great. But you saw that it just kind of dropped it into the world. Well, that's kind of where you're going to want bins. If you put a bin underneath this, let me actually just break this, put a bin underneath there, and then I'll replace the floor. When it stamps things, it will actually put them in the bottom bin, which is really, really nice. Don't get me wrong, that's really cool. But it's not always applicable. So you're going to want to keep in mind it's a 1, 2, 3, probably 4-block tall structure that you're going to want to work with, unless you've got some kind of item vacuum hooked up to just pick up the remnants. So if you've got multiple different kinds going in there, you don't want to have a little bit left in here, so make sure that you put in specific amounts for what you're doing. If you're going to be making plates, you know that it takes a little bit more materials, so therefore you're going to want to put in the exact amounts to equate that, because if you leave a little bit in here, it's just going to sit there, and you're not going to be able to put in another metal type. Now you'll notice that this is one of the few times that we also did not require any kind of lever on here. That's because the lever is more or less for pumping items, so therefore it's just going to automatically work once it's got power and the setup is good. All right, last but not least, we're going to be covering the mixer centrifuge, which is used to make dawnstone. Dawnstone is an alloy made from gold and copper. Don't mind the rays shooting across. And no, they don't hurt you. You can walk in them. So in here, I've got 7 copper ingots. And over here, I've got 7 gold. Actually, those aren't ingots. Those are ores. These are smelting up and are going to be turned molten. While I'm waiting for those to melt up, I'm going to go over here and take a quick look at the Hearth Coil here and see how it's doing. You can see it's been doing work. And you can see how quickly it is currently cooking things. It's like practically 1 per second. So if you give it a bit of time to warm up and a constant flow of ember, then you can really crank through this thing cooking what you would like. But keep in mind that the items will sit in the world and could potentially disappear if they don't have the right items. But I doubt it. I think in this case it's alright because these have been sitting here the entire time. But then again, you also don't want to lag out your entire world or server or whatever with a whole bunch of spam sitting on there. So just make sure that you have what you need to be piped in slowly, probably at about this rate, you know, about 1 per second, and everything will get smelted up lickety-split in this case. It's just really, really fast, incredibly fast, and well, I mean, it's just free stuff, really, because Ember is constantly being mined from the earth. Now, these are currently molten, copper and gold, right? They're good to go. I have these currently set up to pipe out and go into our mixer centrifuge. Now, the mixer centrifuge, here it is. Recipe for such is just a bunch of iron plates, copper ingot, mechanical core, and iron ingots. This here has multiple sections. If you look here, it has a tank on top, and it also has, believe it or not, multiple tanks on the bottom. And you can have these going in from different areas. Now I have currently this here, let me pipe those out, and it should start filling these fluid vessels that I have prepared ahead of time up with the results from our smelting, which should give us about 14 ingots worth. So yeah, it's slowly piping that in. Once that's done, I can then pump this in. But I have it going into multiple sides of the mixer centrifuge, which is just a little stand-up thing here. And of course, it has a spot up here for an ember receptor, so it will require a little bit of that. So let me grab this, shift-click there, turn that on, and it should also start putting a little bit of energy out to our mixer centrifuge, which it will need in order to be powered. And you can pump out the resulting alloy from the top. Now, in this case, I'm making dawnstone. So I believe that these are just, yeah, they're getting close to being finished. I think that that's close enough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pump this in. There we go. And it's going to start slowly making dawnstone, molten dawnstone. Look at that. It is currently doing the job. So if I pump that out into a fluid vessel here, it's just for demonstration purposes, of course. Do that. You should be able to see, there we go. We now have molten dawnstone pumping out here, and I can pump this back into a stamp base so that I can use the stamper to make dawnstone ingots if I so desire, or plates. So let's do that. That didn't take much time at all, and instantly it is making us a bunch of dawnstone. And it's like, well, where'd the ingots go? Remember, I had put a bin down below. So if I kind of use the one probe here, it says that there's 4 dawnstone ingots. Then in a moment, it's going to say 5 dawnstone ingots. Yep. And it's going to continue making until we get, you know, our total of probably about 28, I think. I believe it's a 1-to-1 for the amount of material you have that you use. So if you are making, in this case, there was 14 gold and 14 copper ingots were going to be the resulting doubled recipe. It should probably make around 28 of the Dawnstone ingots in totality. So that's about it for our Machinations of Fire. I've covered everything on here. I know that there's currently a little bit of a glitch with the item dropper at the moment. That's why I kind of decided to show off a little bit on here, but no worries about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on how to get your setup going here, some of the wonderful things that you can do with Embers. I look forward to our next episode of Embers for 111.2. Don't forget to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, spread the mischief to others if you think that they'll enjoy this mischief too. And until next time, folks, I'll see ya.